The best sensitivity is... What is the best sensitivity? It's been a question asked to almost every single top player, content creator, and or streamer in the Splatoon community. And while most will give you an answer what their sensitivity is, you shouldn't necessarily use their answer for yourself. You see, sensitivity revolves around what you play and how you play it. A frontline Slayer player won't necessarily have the same sensitivity as someone who is a backline player. Both types have weapons that are played differently, and depending on the player will have different sensitivity to correlate to the playstyle. If you were playing a Splat Charger, you'd possibly like lower sensitivity to have better accuracy with your shots. If you're playing Splashomatic, you might want a higher sensitivity to better suit the fights you will be in 90% of the time in a match. Sensitivity is set to work for the user, by the user, but don't just take my word for it. Let's ask some competitive players. Tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do, and the role you play in comp.
Hello, I'm Chara, a competitive Splatoon player who mostly focuses in mid-range slaying.
I'm Dude, or the SMT Dude's been a comp player since 2015, UK champion at some point, and played a lot of competitive Splatoon, and I also make content for Splatoon 3 as well right now. In terms of comp, the role that I play is somewhat of a, it's kind of like a support slayer, where it's like I slay, but I'll also support at the same time, so it's kind of like a mix between the two, or a secondary slayer at the same time, so that is what I'm doing right now, since like other roles are not so variable right now.
Hey guys, my name's Chase247. I'm a competitive Splatoon player and content creator, and I'm a Tetradually and Splatana Wiper player.
My name's Kiver. I was previously on the team FT Win. We were 7 times NA champions in Splatoon 2. I play frontline, so predominantly right now I'm playing Splatana Stamper and Slosher Machine and a bit of Wiper as well.
I am Devvy. I am a mid-level comp player. In the past season, put into Div 4. I am a backline main, specifically Hydra, as people call me the Hydra Bomb, just because I'm known to play a non-traditional Splatling. But I've also been the captain of the Grillers for 4 years. That's still up and running.
I'm Q. I'm the backline flex for the North American team Dragpot. I'm also a Charger Connoisseur. I play the backline role majority of the time, and sometimes I'll flex to midline/support when needed.
Hello, this is Kiver, the current EU champion of Splatoon. I've been playing this game since 2015, and I've done so many tournaments and I've won a lot of them. Actually, I think I've won above 100 tournaments overall since Splatoon 1, sorry.
How did you pick your sensitivity?
I kind of just deviated to a slightly higher sensitivity by figuring out what's comfortable with me. I didn't think too much into it.
So how I pick my sensitivity, it mainly depends on how comfortable it was for me to be able to move my crosshair with gyro specifically. Just being able to move the crosshair from one place to another and always feeling comfortable. And it's kind of also a thing where it has to feel very comfortable for me to move my crosshair in a 90 degree, back and forth from facing forward to 90s. Because it's not so necessary to do it with the whole 180 with just gyro, because sometimes it just feels a little weird. I kind of use my stick sensitivity to compensate for that. So currently I'm running +3 for gyro, +5 for stick, so I just kind of bumped my stick up to the max because I can control it, the stick camera in little increments as well, and gyro can just do kind of all the rest when it comes to actual aiming. So that is why I've picked it right now. I've used slower senses in the past as well, but currently for Splatoon 3, this is what I'm most comfortable at.
I picked my sensitivity back in Splatoon 2 when I started to take Tetradually seriously. I saw that other top Tetra players used +5 sensitivity, aka max sensitivity, so I gave it a try. After about a day or so of playing with that, I'd say I got the hang of it. I used that all the way up until towards the end of Splatoon 2, where I decided to lower my motion sensitivity to plus 4.5 because before I found myself whiffing a little too many shots. Doing this felt perfect, and this is still the sensitivity that I use to this day.
Because I'm a frontline player, generally speaking, I think all frontlines should have a higher sense, so I just kind of played max sense, so +5 for a while. Depending on whether or not I'm playing Slosher, which right now I'm not, I'll lower it, so currently I'm playing 3.5, but if I ever play Bucket, back to max sense.
Sensitivity picking, it adjusts all the time, but where I'm sitting right now, I'm sitting at 4 and 3.5, so 4 motion and 3.5 stick. I have it for just where I can do like quick sharp movements and still like I like to combine both because I tried 5.5 and I found it didn't work, and I've kind of stepped down from it after working at that, and I found kind of like still keeping motion at 4 and stick at 3.5 is just nice because you can still get a nice fast rotation with the stick, and you can still do slight movements with wrists because I have had wrist problems in the past. So whenever I do like a full 180 with my wrist, sometimes that will of course hurt that. So I like to be able to do the addition of short movement with the addition of stick. So that way it's still quick and I can get aim on, but I find if I know like my wrists are sore and stuff like that, I will like keep my motion, or not keep motion high, but I'll reduce motion and keep the stick higher up, so that'll balance it out so I don't move my wrists as much.
So currently I use -3.5 motion, +5 stick, but before that, and around Splatoon 1, early Splatoon 2, I used to play +5 motion, +5 stick, but I decided to change that. And I realized it became harder to play weapons that required good aim to use, like with a higher sense. An example, Charger or H3. It was more difficult to control your aim, I feel. And, you know, with a high sense, like, especially with +5 motion, you know, if you make a few slight movements with your controller, your aim just goes everywhere, you know? So, I mean, I decided to, like, reduce it up by a little bit. Well, maybe not by a little bit, by a lot. And it honestly helped. It honestly helped me a lot. I left my stick at +5 because I barely use it when I play.
My current sense is +5 for motion control and +4.5 on stick, because I feel like as a slayer or frontline, this is very useful for me when I have a lot of case where I will have to turn around, or I don't know, like an opponent is trying to chase me, being able to turn around quickly is very good for me, like especially as a mechanical and movement player, like it's very beneficial for me, but it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Why do you think players ask so frequently what other players' senses are?
I think people overthink sensitivity too much, and honestly, it's not that big a deal. A lot of people just seem to go off of what does my favorite player use, or what does this person use, or this guy also uses my weapon and he plays whatever, and I think it just doesn't matter too much. I guess that's the answer to question 3 and 4.
I think it's mainly just because of curiosity, because, like, I mean, for me, I've played both slow and both high sense, and it's just kind of the curiosity of, like, how do you maneuver yourself when it comes to, like, how much are you moving your wrist more compared to how slowly some people might have to move it? Because I don't know, I've seen people when it comes to like LAN events or something like that, I think people are just like curious, like how much more does one player have to like work to play Splatoon and all that type of jazz. So yeah, that's kind of like one thing. I guess like one other thing is also just like, let's say like someone wants to learn how to play a charger. The spectrum of like how one sense could be, like most people, like some of the top chargers use a slower sense, but there are also like some really like crazy demons that can also work a high sense, and it's just like no issue as well. So yeah, that is one thing.
I think people ask for the senses of players they look up to because they want to know what the best players are running so they could try it for themselves.
I think it's a bit of people seeing players make plays that they want to make, so it's like, if I'm gonna be like this guy, I should copy all the things that he's doing. Maybe my aim will be like his, but I think a lot of aim comes from positioning, so I don't think people should do it as much, but I can understand why.
A lot are always curious, especially like when you're finding like a fellow opponent and you find you can rival them really nice. They'll be like, what sense are you? Because maybe sometimes if you find you're losing 1v1s with this player and you're the same role, like take backline 1v1s for example, I know I've asked chargers what their sensitivity is to see how they use it, and the answers vary. Like there's some who keep it on 5-5, there's some higher level chargers who stay in the negatives, and it's just what suits for them. So like I'll see if like they're one of the ones who have more snap, or if more just kind of are below, like they can still snap with it, but I find they're more predictive when they have a lower sensitivity, so they're already kind of like pre-aiming and then are ready to go when it comes to the snap. So for me it's just curiosity in general, and it kind of gives me a better understanding of how they play, but it definitely varies per player, of course. So yeah, just kind of get a better understanding of my opponents sometimes, especially in the comp scene. When I talk to the other backlines and all that, it's just like, what sense do you run? You use this. Okay, so they might predict more. Be careful of that.
Honestly, I think it could be for a variety of different reasons, right? You know, like, it could be they don't know what to run themselves, they're impatient, maybe with the lack of success from the sense they're currently running, so they want something new. Or it could just be as simple as like, oh, they see somebody else playing well with this sensitivity, and they're kind of deceived, I guess, with this false concept of, oh, this player is good with this sense, which means if I run something similar to that, then I'll be just as good. But no, like, that's not how it works. I think the player who's running that sense has probably used that for a while, and they know how it functions inside and out. You don't.
People ask so often about sensitivities or other players, especially top players, because they have no clue how to find their own sensitivity. And I think it's a big mixed mistake, because when you pick a sensitivity, you have to get used to it. And sometimes, even if you want to copy someone's sensitivity, it's not the right choice. Like, I understand it's good for inspiration, but you need to find your own sensitivity, because I don't know, at first maybe you will like the sensitivity, but over time you will be thinking, oh, maybe I should increase my motion by, I don't know, by 0.5 or 0.1. You try and try again, and that would be my best advice, honestly.
What is the biggest mistake you think players make when picking their sensitivity?
I think one of the biggest mistake that some players make is they look at one player and they see that they do this well with this certain sense, and then they switch to it, and then they don't feel comfortable with it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, because some people might actually like stick with one good player's sense because the good player can actually maneuver it well, but that's not really how it really works. It's more of a thing where players probably need to take more time to actually experiment a whole lot more to figure out what is their specific sensitivity. So I think just more experimentation of just, you know, playing around with it, instead of just like sticking with something that's just feels uncomfortable for a really long time, just hoping for it to actually work. So because you never really know. It's like you could like switch it the next, like you could have it at one sense on one day, and then like you switch it around, and you know, you figure it out, and it's just like, wow, this sense feels a little bit better than the other one. So
The biggest mistake you can make is not experimenting. Lots of people will just try one sensitivity, find out they do decent with it, then never try anything else. Even if you do well on a particular sensitivity, just try different things out. You never know, something might feel better than what you're using right now.
100% just copying somebody else and not like doing what's comfortable for them. Because at least personally speaking, I know other machine players who are very good. Let's say I know Brand from Starburst plays like a lower sense. I think he plays like 0 or something. I can't do that. Like, I need to be moving way faster. I don't move my arms or anything that much. So.
The biggest mistake is following. It kind of relates to the last question, but basically following what other people are using. Because we know a lot of the newer players in competitive will question about sensitivity, get an answer, and be like, have most run on 5.5, or people will recommend them like, yeah, eventually you want to get to 5.5. So they'll end up trying that, but it could just make their play worse depending on how like their reactions are, their movements are with their hands, and all that. So I think the biggest mistake is fully going by advice and not applying like your own methods to it as well, like considering how the sensitivity can benefit you, rather than how it benefits the person who recommended the sensitivity, based on what they use.
I'd say honestly, they're probably in the wrong sensitivity range for the weapon. Obviously, sensitivity varies between different weapons, but there's some obvious ones. Like, Tetra users shouldn't be running something in the negatives. For motion, chargers shouldn't be running something in the high positives. But generally, you don't want it to be too fast or too slow. I would rather follow something optimal.
Do you think players should be asking higher level players about their sensitivity settings?
I don't think asking people their sensitivity is a bad question, and there are typically some things about it, which I'll get into here. Typically, the more long-range a weapon you use, the lower your sens is, so chargers will usually have negative sens, while short-range shooters will have really high sensitivities. That being said, it varies. I know Ninikyu, a rapid player in Japan, uses like negative 3.5 sens on that weapon, and most blaster players use a high sens because you have to flick your aim a lot to hit directs. So, honestly, it totally varies on the person. So I'd say, not a bad question, but don't expect whatever the person's answer to be what you should use. It's kind of just a tiny part of the puzzle.
I don't think it's a horrible thing that players do. Like, it's just to figure out like how other players, like how other higher level players choose their sense. Because of course there could be some similarities. Like, a lot of higher level players probably use a higher sense because they played gyro for a really long time and they're able to maneuver a higher sense, or it's just that they're just generally comfortable with it. So I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing just like to try out things and give newer players like some ideas of like how a sense might work. But ultimately, you should still look towards like what is the perfect sense for you, because even though one higher level player uses a higher sense, you could probably be playing so much better on a lower sense and you didn't even know it. So
Yes, but take answers with a grain of salt. You can use top players' answers as inspiration, but don't just copy their exact sensitivity. Play around with it. Like, for example, how I ended up using a sense that's 0.5 lower than most other top level Tetra players.
I think they should ask to get like a benchmark, like it's like an idea. It's like, oh, most frontline players play a higher sense, most charger players play a lower sensitivity, but like ultimately it's up to ability what want to use the most.
So it doesn't hurt to ask higher level players about their sensitivity for curiosity. It's just they don't want to fully adapt to it. Like, for some people, hey, it might work if they're using that sensitivity, but they really need to make the sensitivity about more how they're playing the game rather than the player that they're following. So it never hurts to ask for curiosity, but we don't want to make the mistake of fully following it if it doesn't suit your style or how you're moving the controller.
Yes and no. Also, sure, maybe just get an idea on the sensitivity range for your weapon, but nothing specific. But the rest is that no, because I think the rest is preference. You should just run what you will like.
What is some advice you'd give someone who is looking to find a good sensitivity to use?
So my advice is generally, like, if you're the perfect way to find it is to start on 0-0, which is just the middle ground for everything, and then just shoot the dummies and just figure out what feels the most comfortable. So you can just shoot the dummies, and if you feel like it's too slow, then you bump the sensitivity up, and if you feel like it's too fast, then you bump it down, and then you keep experimenting, and just figure out what is the perfect gyro sense in that. And once you do find it, then do the exact same thing for sticks, and then just kind of cycle through the stick sensitivities to figure out how much you feel like you need to push the stick to have the perfect feel when flicking to the camera to one type to another. Also doing it in the training room as well. So yeah, that is basically my top advice, because if you experiment that way, then it's going to be a much easier way to actually find the perfect sense.
My advice is to not switch around your sensitivity for different weapons. A lot of people will have one sensitivity setting for one weapon, but then they'll completely change it for another weapon that they use. While there are a few high-level players who can make this work, most of them tend to not do that. It's very counterintuitive for most people since your brain now has to adjust to 2 different sensitivities and remember how each one feels, compared to just sticking with one and mastering it.
As I said earlier, like if you play fronts, maybe start at like the 2.5 range, and if it feels too slow, go higher. And if it feels too fast, which I don't think it would, maybe go lower. And if you're a backline, maybe start from something like 0 or something and try to go lower if your aim doesn't feel less steady. It mostly just depends on how steady your aim is and what you need to be doing, what the weapon that you're playing.
Take time in the training room, for sure. You don't have to spend a long time there. It's just you can take a certain sensitivity and be like, I'm gonna try this today. Put it in the training room for a little bit, and then test it in some games, whether it's open, series, and all that. See how it works. And if you find it's working for you, great. If you find you can make it if you need to adjust it higher or lower, then you can make those adjustments and basically rinse and repeat on the next time.
You shouldn't copy somebody's exact sensitivity unless you actually want to try out that sense. Don't do it because the player said so or because you saw them performing well with that sense, because, it doesn't guarantee wins within a few games. I feel like the sensitivity doesn't make the player good, but the player makes the sensitivity good, if that makes sense.
You have to adjust your sensitivity to your needs. You pick up a sense. If you over aim, for example, if you target a dummy and you move too much to the left or too much to the right, decrease your sensitivity. Then you do the same with stick. Like when you adjust for a kill, for example, you miss your kill. You miss the target, and you use your stick to switch back to adjust. Is it easy for you to adjust, or is it difficult? If you still over aim with your stick, you have to decrease it as well. And this is why I have plus 4.5 on my stick. Because I felt like I was over adjusting way too much when I was on plus 5 stick. And yeah, should be it.
I want to give a huge thank you to the players and content creators that let me interview them for this video. They all had some great answers, and I'll link all of their socials in the description below. I also want to mention that yes, there are already a few great videos out there created by creators like Dude, Wadsome, Squid School, and more about this topic. It's because of their videos that gave me some inspiration as well as resources to make this video for you all today, as well as the idea of asking them and giving you their opinions rather than just giving you my own. I will be sure to link the videos in the description below as well. So what's the verdict?
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
The best sensitivity is... There is none. There is no one perfect sensitivity across the board. But there is the best sensitivity for you. Sensitivity is completely based on how you feel playing the game. Do you use motion controls? Do you prefer stick controls? Do you feel the motion is moving too fast or too slow to your movements? This is why there is a bar with varying points to change sensitivity. If something doesn't feel right, you can move it until it works best for you. You make your own custom sensitivity. What feels most comfortable for you to use in the game. Now you might be asking, but Cactus, how do I find the best sensitivity for me? Well, I'm glad you asked. A great place to start is at 0-0 for both motion controls and stick controls. Stand near these two dummies. Next, do a 90-degree turn to hit the dummy on the side. Do this a few times and see how it feels. Is it comfortable? Are you moving your wrists too far over? Are you overshooting or undershooting? If it's not to your liking, go up or down by one whole number on the bar. You are trying to find a sensitivity that feels comfortable for you, and your wrists. You don't want to be twisting your hands in a big circle to splat an enemy in the game. The same goes for the stick control sensitivity. In reference to Wadsum's video on sensitivity, depending on the playstyle you have, you may want a higher stick sensitivity to have quicker motion, for example on a splatter shot, or lower sensitivity to better hit shots, for example on a charger. Another way to test out the sensitivity is to bring it into a turf war or anarchy battle. This way, you can test your new sensitivity on actual players rather than these still dummies. I'd like to end by saying you can totally start your sensitivity based on what someone else has. It can be just as good of a starting point as being on 0-0 and working up or down with it. But there is no guarantee that sensitivity will work for you. Only you know the best sensitivity for yourself. It's up to you to find it. I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of work went into it, from asking the top players and content creators, doing tons of research, and of course, asking the community. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.